Hey everyone, good morning. Hope you're doing well. So this is the last assignment for the week of the 30th of March. And today we're going to be going over sonnets. Now we've read sonnets and we're going to be working a lot more with sonnets. They're kind of like the quintessential English poem, really. Um, the name sonnet just means song. When I say English poem, I just mean like English language poem. The sonnet is actually originally Italian. The three types of sonnet. Well, the three big types of sonnets we're going to go over are the Petrarchan, which is the Italian sonnet, the Shakespearean sonnet, which is probably what you think of when you think of sonnet, and the Spenserian sonnet, which is like the Shakespearean sonnet, but just with a different rhyme scheme. And we're just kind of getting into like a sonnet overview today. We're not going to have to write a sonnet today. Oh, Jasper's here. Hey, Jas. Come on up here. Are you going to do it? He's gonna do it when I look away. So, but yeah. So to start with, I'm just gonna read the sonnets that we're gonna be looking at today. So, here, first one is Sonnet 73 by Shakespeare. That time of year thou mayst in me behold, when yellow leaves, or none, or few, do hang upon these boughs which shake against the cold, bare-ruined choirs, where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away, death's second self that seals up all unrest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. This thou perceiv'st, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well which thou must leave ere long. Yeah, so this was just, it's about getting old. Getting old, you know? The time of year where, like, yellow leaves or none or few do hang upon these boughs, that's like, you know, going bald, as one does as one gets bald and old. Yeah, cool. Shakespearean sonnet. It's, like, written by Shakespeare, I think I mentioned that. Yeah, cool. We're mostly just looking at it for the form, which I'll go over after I've read all of them. The next one is Altruism by Molly Peacock. A Shakespearean sonnet, but a little different. Altruism. What if we got outside ourselves and there really was an outside out there, not just our insides turned inside out? What if there were really a you beyond me, not just the waves off my own fire, like those waves off the backyard grill you can see the next yard through, though not well, just enough to know that off to the right belongs to someone else, not you? What if, when we said I love you, there were a you to love as there's a yard beyond to walk past the grill and get to endure the endless walk through the self, knowing through a bond that has no basis, for ourselves are all we know, is altruism, not giving but coming to know. Someone is there through the wavy vision of the self's heat. Love become a decision. Alright, so that was the two Shakespearean sonnets we're going to look at today. So a sonnet, I mentioned earlier, it's a song, give a little bit about the history. The defining feature of the sonnet is that it has 14 lines and follows a fixed rhyme scheme. And the biggest part is probably the volta, which is the turn. So for Shakespearean, I'm just going to go over the rhyme scheme real quick there. Sorry, just let me fold this paper. So we went over rhyme scheme, these letters. I know this is very low tech, sorry. But these letters just correspond to the sounds. So in Sonnet 73, we have behold and cold are the A sounds, hang and sing, the long A for behold and cold, the O, and B, so on and so on until we get to the end where it ends in the couplet of GG. And you can see there's the spaces here, it's just the stanza breaks really, the quatrains as we call them, and then the couplet. So there's that. You will notice that Altruism by Molly Peacock is slightly different. It's an extended sonnet, so instead of ending in 14 lines with the GG with the couplet, it ends in 16 with two couplets at the end. I mentioned the volta. So in the Shakespearean sonnet, the traditional Shakespearean sonnet, the volta, which is the turn, happens in between the last quatrain and the couplet. The volta, the turn, I've mentioned it before, just like in class in general, but basically it's where the poem takes a sharp turn and something changes. We gain insight into what the poem's been talking about. We come to a conclusion. We thought we had come to a conclusion before, but the poem casts in a new light. In Sonnet 73, and me, like, it's all about, like, I'm dying, I'm fading, you know, sunset fading in the west, lots of fire, heat metaphors. Consumed with that, it was with nourished by, you know, ashes of his youth, that sort of thing. I'm just repeating the poem, being like, yeah. But, like, you see this, which makes your love more strong. To love well, that must leave you before long. So it's like, oh, look at all this. You're thinking it's going to be like a death poem about the finality of death. But then it turns around and addresses the reader and is like, you see how weak and frail my body is. And this makes your love more strong because you love me in spite of that. You don't love me because I'm about to die and you're trying to, like, you know, like, oh, well, they're good nice and I should spend more time with them, that sort of thing. You're just like, actually, that is, I said it backwards, sorry. They're not, like, grossed out by it or, like, trying to get into it. The turn here introduces the speaker and gives us a new perspective on aging, which is the volta, the turn. And the altruism by Molly Peacock. Since the volta in the Shakespearean sonnet comes right before that GG, comes right before that couplet. Jasper just screamed. It's a little harder to pin down. And altruism is especially interesting. I really like the rhyme scheme because it just, for the AA sounds, it's just there and there. For the B sounds, it's just and just. Like, just rhyming words with themselves is, like, not exactly clever. It is clever. It's unusual, and I think it's interesting, you know? Like, no and no as the couplet, too, is really fun. It's interesting. It, like, subverts our expectation of, like, oh, rhyme. The difficult part about rhyme is, like, finding the right word that also has the right sound, you know? It's a constraint that can produce more interesting and engaging ideas. Someone is screaming. I'll be right back. Found him. He had no reason to scream, as usual. Womp, womp, womp. Yeah, so that's the volta, and volta is just Italian for turn. And that's really where the sonnet and, like, most lyric poetry really comes out, is the turn, is a sudden moment of insight or emotion or surprise, you know? And that's the Shakespearean sonnet. Just real quick, if I say, like, so one line, and this is just about, like, if you hear me say quatrain, or couplet, or tercet, or sestet, or octave, or whatever, it's basically, you just gotta know, like, your Latin roots for numbers. So one line in a poem by itself is called a monostick. Mono means one, stick means line, one line. A couplet is easy to parse out. A couple of something is two lines. Tercet means a stanza of 3 lines. Tri, you know. The tri-state area is the area of 3 states. Quatrain is 4 lines. Quad, like, quadcopter, you know, a helicopter with, like, 4 things, like the drones you see a lot. A quintet? Shit, I don't even know. A stanza with 5 lines is a quintet. Like, I don't know, just like a barbershop quintet, you know? A sestet is 6. An octave is 8. After that, it's not really common to just be like, oh, the 7-line stanza, oh, a 9-line stanza, because these terms are largely built around and used for, tercet is like terza rima, like Dante and stuff like that, but the quatrains, the couplets, the octaves, and the sestets, those come from sonnets, and they refer to specific parts of sonnets. So in Shakespearean and Spenserian sonnets, the quatrains are going to be the 12 lines that come before the couplet. And in Petrarchan sonnets, which we're about to look at next, the octave is the 8-line part, the sestet is the 6-line part. The octave comes before the sestet, the octave introduces the thing, the sestet does something with it, you know? So Sonnet 19, which we've read, John Milton's sonnet, not a Shakespearean sonnet. When I consider how my light is spent, I'm just gonna read it. I like reading this one. So. When I consider how my light is spent, ere half my days, in this dark world and wide, and that one talent which is death to hide, lodged with me useless, though my soul more bent to serve there with my Maker, and present my true account, lest he returning chide. Doth God exact day labor, light denied? I fondly ask, but patience to prevent. That murmur soon replies, God doth not need either man's work or his own gifts. Who best bears mild yoke, they serve him best. His state is kingly. Thousands at his bidding speed and post o'er land and ocean without rest. They also serve who only stand and wait. So the Petrarchan sonnet you can see is a bit different. Since the volta and the turn comes earlier in the poem, it's not quite as intense like the Shakespearean one. It's like a revelation, because it's like, oh, there's only 2 lines, it's this big new thing. And the Petrarchan one is more meandering, more sort of inquisitive and melancholical. Melancholical? Yeah, that's definitely a word. Traditionally it's used, the Petrarchan sonnet is like a love sonnet sort of thing, but Milton here just uses it to think about him losing his sight and that sort of thing. So the octave is like him losing. Hi. Someone's being noisy. Hey. Hey Jasper, you want to tell them about octaves? You want to talk to them about Milton going blind? He's like, no, I'm feisty. But so in the octave, he's considering the problem of like, I'm going blind. What does this mean for me as a poet? How can I still be useful to God, / society, / whatever, you know? And in the sestet, that murmur soon replies that God doesn't need him, you know? So, yeah, so that's the Petrarchan sonnet. The rhyme scheme for this one varies a lot. Just in the general stuff you see, you are always going to see the octave and sestet, that basic structure usually. But the rhyme scheme for the Petrarchan is usually Abba Abba, so A B B A B B A A B B A. We can see this in the Milton one with like spent, bent, present, prevent, and then wide, hide, chide, denied. Denied is not a perfect rhyme, but that's fine. And then the sestet is more different. You have C D E here. Sometimes it's like C D D E D D C. Oh, I said 7 letters there. But the sestet can vary a lot in its rhyme scheme, and it's a lot more flexible in terms of that than the Shakespearean sonnet, which hardly ever. What are you doing? Which hardly ever varies in its rhyme scheme. So let's talk about a variation of the Shakespearean sonnet's rhyme scheme. I guess that's not strictly true, because the variation in the rhyme scheme makes it a different type of sonnet. So the Spenserian sonnet, Amoretti 3, The Sovereign Beauty by Edmund Spenser. Shocker, I know. Basically the same as the Shakespearean sonnet, except the rhyme is sort of layered and threaded. I'm just going to read it out loud. Amoretti 3, The Sovereign Beauty. The sovereign beauty which I do admire, witness the world how worthy to be praised. The light whereof hath kindled heavenly fire in my frail spirit, by her from baseness raised. That being now with her huge brightness dazed, base thing I can no more endure to view. But looking still on her, I stand amazed at wondrous sight of so celestial hue. So when my tongue would speak her praises due, it stopped as with thought's astonishment. And when my pen would write her titles true, it ravished as with fancy's wonderment. Yet in my heart I then both speak and write, the wonder that my wit cannot indict. What are you doing? Stop breaking things. He's over there. He's breaking things. Look at how he looks at the camera like, me? No. But so the Spenserian sonnet, essentially the same, not too different. But so in the Shakespearean sonnet, let me center this. Sorry. A B A B C D C D E F E F G G. Again. The Spenserian sonnet, the rhyme is sort of interwoven, almost like kind of like how a pantoum moves, and that A B, and then the rhyme from the second and fourth lines of the first quatrain becomes the rhyme of the first and third of the next. It's kind of like the pantoum's ancestor, a little bit. And what it does is it gives us a much more layered feel, a much more like cohesive feel. It's also a little hard to do. It gives you less variety. The Spencerian rhyme scheme is more focused, but it can have less scope. It does good here. He's basically kind of talking about the sun, you know. But you'll see the interlayering of it. The Shakespearean, you get two more different sets of rhymes. You get F and G rhymes. With the Spencerian, you only get to E, and that's the couplet that's ending. So it depends on how much you want to play with sound. The Shakespearean gives you a little more freedom to, like cacophony and euphony. You can make more good sounds, you can make more bad sounds, you can have more of a mix. The Spencerian is going to be more limited in the terms of the sonic sort of work that you can do, but that can also actually make it more focused, and you can play more with the same sounds and get more deeper into them. So it's really just like, do I want to focus on these rhymes, or do I want to have more rhymes in general? Is if when you're thinking about writing a sonnet, which one you should pick, I guess in general, like, if you're like, I'm going to write a sonnet, which one should I do? It's like, do you want to have a sharp twist at the end? I still have my camera turned. I'm like, why do I feel off-center? It's because I am. Do you want a sharp twist at the end? How strict do you want to be with rhyme? Is it a meandering sonnet? And you just want to kind of fit that to your topic and your mood, Like if you just kind of want to have a more meditative sonnet, you probably want to go Petrarchan. If you want to like surprise somebody, if you want to write about something that surprised you, you probably want to go Shakespearean or Spencerian, Yeah, and let's see. I'm just trying to make sure I didn't miss anything for today, sorry. I mentioned that the Altruism by Malloy Peacock, it's an extended sonnet. I don't know if I said that specifically, so I'm just going to reiterate it. And then I went over the, monostic, couplet, tercet, quatrain, quintet, sestet, octave. I guess a 9 stanza one would be a non-tep. Sorry. But yeah. That's pretty much all I have for the sonnets today. This was like a primer for sonnets. Y'all have done a lot of work with the villanelles and the haikus for this week. So I don't mind giving you a little bit of a lighter day, and I don't want every Friday poem this week to be like a poem that you wrote for an assignment. So last Friday poem is just whatever you want to be. Next week we'll get more into sonnets in terms of meter, even more kinds of sonnets, blank verse and stuff like that. So if you all have a good weekend, as always, be safe, take care of yourself, wash your hands.